Welcome to Spiritual Warrior TV and Podcast, your go to channel for everything related to spirituality, metaphysics, personal development, and well being. I'm your host, Renzo Ruiz Haas, and I'm on a journey myself as a truth seeker and as an explorer to discover and to share with you all the best tips, tools, and different approaches that contribute to nourish our souls, embrace our humanity, and help us incarnate the greatest and brightest expression of ourselves. Because when we become better versions of ourselves, we make this world a better place. Yeah. What's up, my beautiful souls? You want to know something funny? This next episode wasn't even supposed to be an episode. But there was an interesting conversation going on, so I decided to continue the conversation. And while it was recording, I said, yeah, this is going to be it. So here we go with our next guest, who's a former Canadian Armed Forces infantry sergeant. He served with the Royal Winnipeg Rifles, Queen's Own Rifles, and operationally with 2 PPC allied. He's an undergraduate of University of Manitoba in kinesiology with focus on physiology and psychology. A student of functional medicine and nutrition, psychology, and human behavior, energy healing, shamanism, immunology, among other diverse things. He's currently pursuing a diploma in osteopathy in a 5-year program along neurology, functional, and applied neurology. Without any further ado, let's jump right into it. So, Lovedeep, tell me a little bit more about your professional background.
I did an undergrad mostly because, something that I was supposed to do.
Yeah, kind of like the thing that kind of the same reason why I went to college as well. And
yeah, exactly. Your parents want you to do something, and
exactly.
Especially at that time, we're talking, early 2000s. It's still in this kind of linear mindset of go to school and
Right.
the process that was. So I was like, okay, what do I like? I like certain things, but the one thing I've always been keen about was training, like working out, and not in the typical I guess stereotypical kind of meathead way, but more in like about performance. Like there had to be an outcome beyond just the aesthetic, and
Right.
part of it was just that's why I always saw training. Part of it was because I was just getting a big into kickboxing at the time, and the other part of it was because now I had a purpose with the infantry. And the infantry is, you go hard. It's a physically demanding job for durability, but also at some point in time I knew I wanted to deploy. You got to be fit when you go and do that stuff, right?
Yeah, for sure. So, it's part of the job, right?
Yeah, exactly. It comes with the territory. So for me, it was an easy decision to say, well, I got to go to school. I like training. Let's learn more about what's happening in the body. And I did a kinesiology degree. And, as I started to find what I liked in that, I found that there's aspects in kinesiology I like better than other aspects. So that helped me, put my focus towards what I wanted. So I like pathways. I like knowing what's happening in the body and being able to quantify that. So things like the actual kinesiology science of physics and the biochemical side of things were, my favorite areas. So I did a focus on exercise physiology. And then as that started to happen, the second question was like, oh, let's just drive physiology, and that's psychology, and I always, even when I was younger, I always looked at how people were thinking. And I found I knew it was a unique way of thinking, wondering what makes people tick. Because when you're 10 years old, it's not what you should be thinking about.
Yeah.
So, here I am, I think back to like when I was like 10, and I'm wondering what's going on in someone's life for them to want to be like, mean or frustrated, So I'm not just jumping to this conclusion by saying this person is mean or they're an asshole. It's what's happening. Why is that?
Like trying to understand human behavior. Basically.
Yeah. So I think
I'm the same. I'm very curious about like human behavior and stuff.
Yeah, and like now it's like awesome because like we recognize that and we're able to facilitate that into our life and make it part of our life in some way. And back then I think that was my first step because it was funny to sit back and even observe myself and the decisions I was making in my education, because psychology is huge. It's a huge, huge, huge area of study.
Oh yeah.
And I actually hated Psych 101. Like I really just didn't like that course. I found
Well,
it
like the classic Freud.
just, yeah, like, kind of like the introduction of the terminology,
Yeah.
sitting in a room with hundreds of other people, you know, I
I,
didn't like it.
I've been getting into NLP
Oh
lately,
man,
and I love it, man. It's really.
I studied up to NLP master practitioner.
Oh really? No,
Uh,
I'm just like beginning in that. Like,
it's phenomenal stuff, man.
I
Like
got myself a book to learn like the basics, and yeah,
I mean, like
I'm
moving
loving it
forward,
so
like if
far.
you want to get to the point where you want to just exchange back and forth, I could teach you process. I could take you through process. I
Love it.
love
I
it.
would love it.
Um, well, I found it. What was interesting in university was like that's kind of where I was going without knowing anything about that. Is I was looking at
Where did you
these.
learn NLP? By the way.
So it again, like kind of like everything. Like I found these. My whole way of how things kind of laid out and played out is pretty interesting and random, like very random.
Okay.
My first exposure to it, unusually enough or usually enough, I don't know, was someone told me about the seduction side of things, like the black psychology, the dark psychology.
Okay.
So there's this, I mean, and like I didn't connect with it, but I was curious about it. So someone shows me the work of this pickup artist who uses a ton of NLP, basically
Oh
NLP,
yeah.
and he uses it for two things. He uses it because he gave guys patterns to work with to elicit states with the women that they were talking to, but he also gave them models that they can use for themselves to become more confident, more present, more resourceful. And he basically taught one model of a really arrogant, present, confident kind of guy. So most of his work was around modeling, which is like master practitioner type of stuff. And the
Right.
second half was around these memorized patterns, but learning all the intricacies about how to deliver the pattern. So you memorize words, but your art form was basically the delays between the words, the intonations of the words to really arise a state. And
Right, because there's the words and there's also like the nonverbal, all the pauses,
exactly.
which are as important. The moments of silence, which is as
Yeah,
important as
exactly.
the words.
And then like, it's, there's a presupposition in NLP, which you may or may not be aware of, which is you can't not communicate. So basically everything we do is communication. When you think about verbal communication,
I think intuitively, I'm kind of doing this type of things as well.
yeah,
Might not be at the level of master practitioner of NLP, but at an energetic level, once you like get into those worlds of energy, you also realize that we communicate in terms of energies and
big
that we
time.
are multidimensional beings, right?
Yeah.
Communicating with different levels.
There's a cool little thing that we were doing in my NLP training from day one. It was called circuitry sensing. It's kind of a unique
Okay.
piece to my paradigm that I learned from. And what it basically was, it was a sense of basically calibrating with the person you're communicating with to have an intuitive sense or an energetic sense, if you want to go there, about what, we'll say what side they were on about a certain aspect. So if you and I are sitting here, what we can do is we can pick two polarities, hot day, cold day. And you're going to sit there and you're going to do whatever you need to do. And you're going to put yourself into an experience of a cold day. And I'm going to study you. And then you'll put yourself into an experience of a hot day. And then once I calibrate to what that is, all the unconscious things. So you'll have body language, your eyes will change and
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
You'll close your eyes and you'll randomly pick one of the two, and you're not going to tell me, and I have to guess. And the way I guess is I'm basically strengthening. We're kind of strengthening a skill where I have to become much more attuned to what is it that I'm feeling on the inside that's telling me what you're doing, but also be aware of the unconscious subtleties that you're changing to that are individualized to the state you're in. So if you're hot, maybe
Right.
your eyebrows, go up, and if you're cold, maybe you tighten your lips. I have to be aware of those things. And when you get really good, that feels very energetic because it becomes a pure intuitive experience to myself.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Unconscious competency at that point. So the NLP side, I had these interesting questions. I didn't like the seductive stuff. It wasn't who I was and what I wanted to do with it. But it got me asking questions about how you can shift a state and make someone a totally different person by giving them essentially a belief system to operate off of and rehearse, and the verbal, nonverbal communication. So I started to ask around. No one knew anything about it. I did some searching on the internet, didn't find much. I moved to Toronto, and the way I moved to Toronto was basically through a pretty kind of leap of faith kind of decision. The very first day that I got into Toronto, I did a search just online, NLP training in Toronto. I didn't know why I wanted to do training as opposed to just learning about it. But I figured, you know what, if you learn the skill, I can use it and I can apply it and also get a good sense of what it is beyond just this whole pickup artist thing.
Right. And that's like, I think that's our higher self speaking to us through these
Yeah.
synchronicities to telling us, okay, this is your path. Like, you don't know, and it often, because it doesn't operate in the logic part of the brain, right? It's just,
And that's it.
like that intuitive side telling you you got to go this way, and you're like, then your mental comes in like, no, but why? Like, I want to do this, and your intuition is gonna pulling you back. You're like, okay, I'm telling
Yeah.
you this way, and
It
you
really
don't know
felt
why you do something, but you just know that you have to do it for some reason, and that's like
I just
intuition speaking.
followed along. It felt good. I found two different courses online that were happening in Toronto, and one just spoke to me. And again, it was just the intuitive sense was just like poking me and just prodding me along to be like, go here. So I give the guy a call. Sorry, I email him, and within like minutes, he's like, hey, you want to talk on the phone? I'm like, sure. So he gives me a call. We're talking, and he's basically, how'd you find it? Same story I just told you. Like, I got an exposure to it. I think there's more to it. He's like, there definitely is. He's like, I got a course starting. And this is like, it's probably going to be like a Monday or a Tuesday when I'm talking to him. I'm like, when's the course starting? He's like, this Saturday. Okay.
Well,
How much is the course? It's like, I think it was like $3,500 or something like that. $3,500. Okay. How long is the course? 6 months, every second weekend. So huge time commitment, huge dollar investment. I just don't know this guy. I don't even really know what NLP is at this point. Just that it's something kind of cool that I'm interested in. Again, just following the inner sense. I was like, absolutely, I'm in. I'll see you Saturday. I walk in Saturday. And I probably gave it a good 5 years of consistent study.
wow.
That course right away, I went into master practitioner right after that course, and then continued to study it and work with and explore it myself for a few more years after that. And I'm actually now coming back to it now just because of a different perspective, different life experience, and just finding a more integrative piece for it. I love it. I find it to be a very valuable tool.
Right, because there's the studying part and there's putting the whole thing in practice as well, right?
Absolutely. And then the
Just
biggest
like
thing
when you go
is,
to school to be a lawyer or whatever you want to do, it's not by when you finish your diploma that you're a lawyer. It's by taking your first cases, and that's how you start actually
you got to get your hands dirty.
becoming a
You got to
lawyer,
do it.
right?
Yeah. And just like you mentioned, the biggest thing was the realization that we do a lot of this stuff already pretty naturally. What we're doing is, if anything, we're not building a skill. We're actually removing a lot of layers so we can get to that actual like best authentic communication that we all are aware of.
Wow, I like that.
But
Removing
when
a lot
you,
of layers. Yeah.
when you remove the biases, because people are triggered and that puts them into a state. So if you and I are having a conversation about, sports are a big trigger for a lot of people, as opposed to just
Right.
hearing your perspective or, sharing an exchange on, say, competition, which is what sports all about. It gets us fired to the point where it becomes a heated argument. And now it's not constructive because I'm pissed off and you're pissed off.
Exactly, and
We got to break
I
that
don't know
trigger.
how many times I seen that and I realized that I was like, oh, okay. And I even got caught up in this like these patterns, right? Where like,
Oh, yeah.
oh, it becomes like an us against them. Then you realize, okay, this is just my ego taking over, and you
Yeah.
kind of like come back to the your true self. Okay.
Oh, yeah. And we always are going to. And like, like right away, my mind goes to like, when we were messaging back and forth and, I made a comment. I'm like, we're always going to be looking for like that one thing. Like it's never done, and so we're always going to be aware. We're always going to be working in this perpetual awareness state.
Yeah.
Will it improve? Absolutely. But the thing is, it's going to be this ongoing delicate state where you can be thrown into a triggered or unconscious state where you're like, what did I say? What did I do? But we're able to catch it or we're able to learn from it now as opposed to just being in that place unknowingly,
Exactly.
right? Which is, I think that's what we're really after here. Just being aware of things, right?
Yeah.
So, NLP has been great. And like, there's, when you get past practitioner, it's interesting because I'd recommend just sitting there and just doing the best with those basics, because NLP is all about just that virtuosity piece. It's probably the best definition of virtuosity, because you learn the
Yeah,
basics of communication, and you learn how to basically say that communication is so much more than words. Like there's so much value. I've always recognized it, but now especially, there's so much value in just being in a silent state with someone and being able to evaluate that
for
sense of
sure.
comfort or discomfort or movement that exists without saying a single word, and what's valuable in that. And the basics of the practitioner course really give you the ability to go there. Master practitioner is awesome, but what happens is you start trying to apply new tools that you probably don't even necessarily need, until the question arises. So when you get to master practitioner, it's more like a confirmation as opposed to like a new competency being built. That's how I feel about it now, especially because I feel like I rushed the process, because like now I'm looking at modeling in a totally different way. Whereas when I was doing master practitioner, just based on modeling, it was really around, okay, being able to mimic and mirror something to be able to understand the perspective. I still give you that same definition as modeling, but the non-tangible way to describe it and experience it is something that just didn't exist for me at that time. And if it did, I just wasn't very aware of it.
Right.
So like
And
the
it's good.
basics.
I find it's good to learn all these tools
Mhm.
and all these modalities, and then kind of like express it your own way.
Oh yeah, it's got to be.
I don't know if you know what I mean by that,
So
but just like
yeah, I think I got an idea, and like
kind of like NLP, you can be like a master practitioner at NLP, whatever, but then you have like your own life experience and your own baggage that you can
mhm.
add to that, right? To
Oh for
make it
sure.
efficient. Because like per se, I don't know who your professor was, so the one, your teacher,
Mhm.
but he has his own way of like teaching things and practicing that, which is it's probably most likely not going to fit your way of doing things and your way of practicing it, right?
No, but like even that, like like it's all part of the lessons, right? Because you got to
Right.
be able to grasp that and understand that. Because if he says something and you're like, I disagree, well, right there you've been provoked, or trigger something. So you got to sit there and be like, he's trying to communicate something. He's trying to communicate in a metaphor that makes sense to me, but as he sees the world, I can
Right.
recognize that. I can have compassion to that. So my job now is to dissect everything that's nonverbal there, because it's only his word choice that threw me off. Like they use meta message being the big thing. You
Okay.
know, what we say is what we're saying, but the underlying message is what we're trying to communicate, and that can often get pretty pretty diluted with our word choice because of our experiences. I have certain words I go to, expressions that I go to, that might totally put you into a state that doesn't put you into a place to absorb information.
Right. And we have different, every person has a different association with words too, right?
Yes, yes.
Business might not mean the same thing to me and to someone else, or just simple words that we use every day that we don't realize, but the meaning that we put behind it, like depending on our life experience, is way different than someone else's.
This is what makes communication really fun, because I remember anytime I ever took like an NLP course, because the cool thing about the master practitioner course I took was I got to go to help out at the practitioner courses. So I had my own course that I was doing, but during that course, and then actually after that course, I got to just show up, just jump in other practitioner courses and help out, and also just take in more information. And one of the questions that always came up time and time again, which I absolutely love, and I'll even pitch it to you right now, is what is NLP? And my answer to that, and it still is it's the adventure of communication. Because the fun part of it for me
Right.
is I have to learn how to calibrate, and I need to understand how you see the world so I can communicate to you. It doesn't matter what
Exactly.
I do. Who cares, right?
Yeah,
It's
no, it's to be able to speak the other person's language,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Yeah. No, yeah, I get what you're saying there. It's yeah.
It makes it really fun. Like, I don't think there's a boring conversation anymore. Like, you could talk to a person and that they can be super monotone. They can be talking about, I don't even know, the most boring thing, you know. But there's something about the way you're paying attention and picking up on understanding who they are, not even so much what they're saying, but you can't help but absorb the message that they're giving you because you're understanding it at a deeper level. And that conversation becomes so much deeper. And the thing is, whenever we get into a really good connected conversation, whatever the topic is, it just feels good.
Right.
You know?
It's awesome, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's you know what? It's been recording the whole time, and
Yeah.
what you just said, it's awesome.
Oh, thank you.
So, like,
Dude, like I just love to talk about this stuff. This is what I do like, all the time.
you like without even realizing it, I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna record just in case, and you know what? I don't regret it.
Oh, that's awesome. I'm happy to hear that.
That's pretty cool. But like, yeah, basically, like essentially, I wanted to talk about and I wanted you to share was more like your experience with like before ayahuasca.
Mm-hmm.
What was the event that pushed you to like do
Mm-hmm.
this, and how do you feel after it, right?
Yeah. So I've been working with ayahuasca now since 2017, December 2017. And I don't even know. I've done at least 20 ceremonies at this point,
Oh wow.
amongst other plant medicines. And I've been to Peru twice. First time was, my initial experience. The second time was, more of a pilgrimage. That was just this past February. So going in before ayahuasca, I had a lot of questions, right? And I still have a lot of questions. And like I mentioned, I was looking at things differently. I was curious about behavior. I was curious about communication. But what happened was the questions were, they felt like they were barriers and blocks and obstacles, where it's almost like I was asking questions, but I wasn't feeling worthy of actually understanding the answer or receiving an answer for that matter. So I got to explore, but exploring was almost like this like super demanding and challenging and exhausting effort. So was it worth it? Yeah, sure. It would have been. But what was happening was I was able to talk myself out of it, saying it's just too hard and it's too tiring. And not from like a lazy perspective, just from the standpoint that I'm not worthy. And if I put the effort forward, I'm just going to put the effort forward for disappointment because these are questions I'm just not supposed to know answers to. So like there was my block and my limitation and my limited beliefs, where that stems from or what that really means. I mean, yeah, there's a long
Right.
story, right?
No, I also felt those same limiting beliefs as well, like not worthy enough, you know?
Yeah, and how that weird played into my life was just, all the typical conflicts that people have. I just didn't feel that I was deserving of happiness and well-being and health, and with my limiting beliefs in terms of like life and work ethic. I've always valued hard work and stuff, so I always worked my ass off. I did enjoy it, still enjoy it, which is why I love the infantry. Hardship and stuff was growth, but there wasn't this element of saying that I can actually be in a pleasant, enjoyable space where I can actually
And you know
enjoy
what? I
life.
think it's something ingrained in us,
Oh yeah,
kind of like hardwired as soldiers. You know, we have this like pushing through mentality,
yeah,
which unfortunately also that's one of the things that prevents us from asking for help or, opening up with our struggles and hardships, right?
absolutely. And I think like probably the biggest differentiating factor between what you're describing there as past and still having that identity but present is the the lens we look at it. Whereas before it was just the way of operating. It's about being in a state of, I'll say, misery. It's not necessarily that dramatic, but hardship is the way of being, and that's all it's going to be. Whereas now, we basically operated from our wounds, and we were our wounds. Whether
Right.
that's childhood or ancestral or
And a
some sort of
lot
trauma.
of people, they create an identity
Absolutely, yeah,
around that traumatic event or that past pain that they've been through, and so they associate themselves to that
yeah,
thing. So it's like they don't want to let it go because they create a sense of identity to it,
yeah.
pretty
And
much.
changing identity is I mean, if it's not impossible, it's pretty close, because if you were to walk out tomorrow
Takes
and
work. That's for
say
sure.
that your name is David, how long would it take before the whole world's calling you David? You know, like that's the challenge of identity. And when you start looking at the hierarchy of how that affects the rest of your life, like, you're not going to want to change because there's certain parts of your life that you are safe with, not necessarily like, but you're secure about, because the brain's all
True.
about security. So you're
Yeah.
not going to change something that's bad or negative because it's safe. So
You create like a comfort zone where people don't want to get out, and yeah, no, I get it.
even if
It's
it's not healthy, and like, that was where I operated. And I think most people operate. Whereas like now, the biggest shift from then to my first experience with ayahuasca in Peru was this understanding that no, those wounds are in fact, what we'll call initiations, lessons, teachers that we can learn from to really become more authentic, healthy,
oh
you know,
yeah,
loving selves. And like, I sit here, I'm like, these wounds are there, the scars are there, but they taught me so much. I feel awesome. I feel happy about them. I feel proud about them. I embrace them.
exactly.
But
It's about embracing, every part of ourselves, all our life experience, because that's what brought us to where we are today, right?
exactly, yeah. So there's a great
And
gratitude about that. And like, I got that from the
for
first
sure.
experience with ayahuasca. And the cool thing about the first time I went, so I was there for a week, and I did 4 ceremonies. Now, the thing is that's kind of funny about how I kind of got into ayahuasca was like, I knew of it by name, by hearing about it maybe once, and I didn't know anything else about it. Like I didn't know what it did. I just knew that it's one of those things that people do in Peru. That was my only understanding of it.
It's one of
And
those things where you don't look for the plant
finds you.
calls you,
It does, and that's
and
exactly what it
you
was.
answer. You either decide to answer the call or not, but the plant calls you.
Yeah, and
I
that's
mean,
exactly what
there's
happened.
really the best way to describe it for me really that.
Yeah, because it never was in my mind or in my psyche or anything in my world to any degree to be like, one day I'm going to go to Peru and do ayahuasca. One day I was a guy who was living from, a wounded state, not a bad state, just a state of being, but having challenges, to one day having a conversation with someone that became a mentor of mine, and he kind of started this whole process just through communication, through word. And I remember the very next day, because he really got things that shaking loose in me in a very profound way. The next day, I just needed to go for a walk after I spoke with him. I didn't know where I needed to go. I literally put sunglasses on, a hat on, so I could just be tunnel vision and focused. And I mean, it was like about as old school infantry as you can go, because just head down and go and walk, just like a ruck march, right? And I'm walking and walking and walking. I don't know where I'm going, right? I'm just kind of following this thing. And next thing you know, I'm at this high point that's overlooking a certain part of the city in Toronto. And I'm standing on top of this hilltop, looking at this overview, being like, "Damn, I don't even know how I actually got here. Like, I've never been there before. I've never walked there before, but I followed this path and got there. And I'm looking
Well,
over this area, just taking it all in, enjoying it. Still kind of curious how I got there, but that's cool. And as I'm standing there, it just kind of just dropped in my head. It's like a download of like, you got to take your ass to Peru at some point in time, and you got to start working with ayahuasca, whatever that means. Like, what does it mean to work with with ayahuasca?
yeah, no, it's crazy. It's crazy.
Yeah,
Same thing happened for me. I went to the jungle. I spent almost 5 months there in the Amazon
nice.
in Peru, and I went at first because my cousin was working at a lodge.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, there's this one spot, and the lady he was working with, she had an accident, like bike accident, so she was out for a while,
Hmm.
and there was a spot there. It's like, hey, they need someone, and you're trilingual. They're looking for someone who like
Yeah.
looking for someone bilingual. I think you got this, man. Come in, come and. And at the time, I was like, yeah, still in the reserves. I'm like, you know what? This experience sounds something fucking awesome. I got to do this.
Yeah.
Like, so I just didn't even think about it. I took a flight there to Peru, went to the jungle, and then it was this doctor. Yeah, it was a German doctor
Hmm.
who was doing ayahuasca sessions for his daughter because she had like some type of leukemia or
Okay. Yeah.
yeah, some I can't remember well. I think it was leukemia. Anyways, uh, and he had a private shaman like for him.
Wow.
Then he called me out. He's like, "Hey, have you ever tried ayahuasca before?" Like, no, but I'm curious. Like, okay, then come join us in a ceremony. We're gonna do this like next week, so you can prepare with the dieta and the whole thing. Like, okay, cool. Uh, and that's how it happened for me. You know, I wasn't even
There you go. It finds you. Yeah.
exactly. I wasn't even looking to do it, and it just found me
Yeah.
at the
And
right moment in my life because I was also like asking myself a lot of questions.
yeah. And that's it. Like the timing is impeccable. Like, when it happens, like if just recently, like I was I went for a 2-week master plan dieta in February. And the first thing is that happened is like, the way the timings worked out, it was incredible because I booked this stuff in December and, and then, with the work I do and stuff, yeah, I was going to have to like tell my clients and stuff. It just happened that like almost all my clients were actually going to be away at that time anyway. They're, various clients were going for business trips, vacation, some were sick. Like just everyone that had to be away was away at the exact same time that I was going to be away.
Like
Right.
everything aligned perfectly
It, it, it
for you
did
to.
absolutely. And then when I got there, the dieta was perfect. What's crazy is I met the head maestro at the center, and she actually appeared in some of my earlier ceremonies. She actually visited me in some
Who's
ceremonies.
that?
Maestro Ines from um, Niwazabo, which is in Pucallpa or outside of Pucallpa.
Okay, Calvo, yeah.
Yeah, she owns her own center with
Okay, you were near the Cusco area.
closer. Yeah, the first time I was
Yeah,
in
I was up
Iquitos.
in the north in Tarapoto. I don't know,
Okay, yeah.
Iquitos. I don't know if you've
I
heard
was
of.
in Iquitos the
Yeah.
first time.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and then this time I was in Pucallpa just because of different dieta experiences. Like master plant wise, I wanted to be really, really immersed in it.
Hmm.
So it's crazy when I met her because I mean she doesn't speak any English. She barely speaks Spanish. She's mostly speaking Shipibo, right? Because it's they
Right.
still live the Shipibo lifestyle. Um,
Yeah, the
she,
same for me though. The guy he spoke Spanish as well, but the chantings he did, the Icaros, they call it. He sang in Shipibo.
man, I love the Icaros too. They're just
Yeah.
unbelievable. And she had actually visited me in some other ceremonies I'd done about a year ago. Um, which was interesting because when I had I guess met her in my initial ceremonies, she was just a medicine woman that said that she's following me and she's following me because she's providing healing and she's providing me guidance. So when I met her, it was like, wow, this is insane because like you know, I've seen you. You've been in my ceremonies, and here you are taking me to a master plant diet.
Oh, that's amazing.
She just knew what was up. Like she just, as soon as she met me, she knew what master plant to give me. So I dieted with Renikila. I don't know if you know the master plants, but Renikila is a really interesting plant.
Renikila, you know what? I never heard of that plant before. Explain me that.
So are you familiar with like the master plant dietas?
Well, yeah, I've heard of the master plan dietas, but I didn't know. I never heard of Renikila specifically.
Okay, yeah. So
Like I've heard of many different plants of that, but Renikila, no,
yeah,
that's a new one to me.
it was interesting because like it's not what I expected. And so when I did my initial intake on the phone, they sent me the list of the master plants they work with, and they were like, "What we recommend just for fun is read the plants and see what plants jump out at you. Because those are the ones you're probably drawn to for a reason.
Wow,
And
that's a cool approach.
it's
Actually, it
cool.
makes a lot of sense.
It's not like I'm going to go there and pick the plant, but it was kind of just like where's my personality really drawing me to, and like I jumped out at these interesting plants that are, of course, the ones I chose, were like the most intense, demanding, wise kind of plants. Like they're trees, which one day I hope to diet with them. But I get there and they don't give me those. They give me Renikila. And Renakila came through a conversation that they had with me and just observing me. And Renakila is interesting because she's a very feminine plant.
Mm.
And it was funny because as I got to diet with her, because so basically for 2 weeks I was by myself in solitude in my tambo. I was drinking Renakila every day. We were doing ayahuasca ceremonies every second day. I was fasting, so I'm really connected to the plant.
Mm.
I was dry fasting for 48 hours at a time, and then I'd only have a light lunch the day of ayahuasca ceremony. And that was all I had for 2 weeks, and so I was very connected.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting
And
there.
it's funny because when you do it, ayahuasca, you don't feel really hungry.
No, you don't. Like, you're tired, but that's the point. Like,
Yeah.
the first maestro I ever had in Peru, the first time, he had told me that, because I got really weak. I always notice every time I drink ayahuasca, to this day, that I can't move. Like, I'm so weak during ceremony.
Oh yeah, for sure.
If
That's
someone tries
normal.
to if someone tries to pick me up, you're gonna have to carry me. So like every time they sing an Icaros to me, it's hilarious because either they have to pick me up and hold me up, or I'm just gonna lay there and take it. I can't move.
That's why I always recommend people, like, whoever you want to do it with, just make sure you trust the person you're doing it with, because
Absolutely,
you're
yeah,
putting yourself out there in a vulnerable position as well, right?
yeah,
So if
and
you don't trust the shaman you're doing it with, like, just don't do it.
yeah, and you'll know pretty much right away too.
Yeah, exactly. Follow your intuition. That's what I tell people. Follow your intuition when it comes to this.
Yeah,
And there's something that's off with the person, and
telling you something.
don't do it.
Yeah, and he had mentioned to me that ayahuasca makes your body weak so the spirit can do its work. You know, so doing this dieta, I was super weak, and I'm like, okay, and I'm sitting there with Renakila, I'm getting to know her, and she's doing her work. I can feel her Icaros, integrating into me. I had a good laugh about it, as I was getting to know her and she was integrating, because I was like, Renakila's a lot like me, in that she's very quiet and observant, and when she says something, it's got a lot of depth, right? And it just kind of shakes you to the core, right? So I got
Wow.
along with her because she communicates kind of in a similar way that I communicate kind of on the day to day, and she's very nourishing, and that she kicks your ass, but with a big smile on her face. Very loving, but very
That's awesome.
like it's not psychedelic. Like she's not psychedelic. Most master plants are not. But I'd be sitting there and just be totally just at peace. And I can just, I can hear the wind. I can feel the sun. I feel totally at ease. Next thing you know, I start hyperventilating, and she takes me to this dark place where I start making connections about something in my past. And I'd be sitting there and I'd be hyperventilating and bawling my eyes out, and me being me, same point in time, I'm so excited. I'm like, yes, this is so good, and I'm
Right.
just enjoying it. But she's just guiding me in this really, it's almost like she kind of pointed me into the direction and then let me play. It was like, I'm only
Right.
here to help you out if I have to, but I want you to go get dirty and go get beat up on your own. And then you'll come back
Exactly.
and I'll give you a hug after and make it all better.
That's it. Buckle up and go for the ride.
Yeah. So that's how she worked. Um, and
Wow.
I actually only finished my full dieta like 2 weeks ago, where I've all the diet, and all the ongoing stuff. So she's still been there working pretty aggressively, and it's been the same ever
Yeah,
since.
it's kind of like once you do it, it stays in your system,
It
for a while.
does.
You feel it, like even a year later, you still feel it, like
Well, and then that's the nature
the
of the
plant inside of
Icaros.
you.
Yeah, and because like I mean the Icaros, the coolest thing is I had some great conversations with the facilitator there, and they were able to translate some stuff from the other maestros, because I had curiosity, and they saw that because in one of my ceremonies, um, my typical getting my ass kicked kind of ceremonies, uh, I was told halfway through the ceremony, just to ayahuasca herself, she gave me the word medico. She's like, "You're a medico." I was like,
I
"Oh,
like how you said she,
yeah,
because it's a very feminine, to me, it's a very feminine energy, ayahuasca.
it is. It's very. I mean, Mother ayahuasca, like
Yeah.
it's got that
Like
nature.
Mother Earth.
Yeah,
That's when I first realized that Mother Earth, Pachamama, was a living entity on its own, with
absolutely.
its
Yeah,
own consciousness. It was like,
Oh
I was
yeah.
mind blown by that. I was like, wow,
It's
I was like,
and nurturing, but very very telling, very very
right.
it's going to reveal the truth to you no matter how you like it or not, how comfortable, like a mom would, you know.
Yeah.
uh, and like it's indefinitely scalable. She kept saying medical, 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 you're medical. I didn't quite know what it meant. I had a sense. The next day, I had a chance to talk to the shaman because they came by every evening to our huts to give us an Icaros based on our plant.
Hmm.
Bless us with the mopacho. And I asked the maestro, what does medical mean, and why did they call me medical? And her eyes lit up, and she's like, "You're a healer, right?
Wow.
She initiated you last night, and I'm like, that's probably why I felt like so shit. Like it was fucking hard." And and she looked at me with this compassion in her eyes, like she knew I had a tough ceremony. Um, and I was like, "So was that an initiation?" She's like, "Oh yeah." She's like, "You had an initiation last night. That was basically giving you something special." And I got to ask
Wow.
questions because of that. So I asked
Bro,
about.
I got shivers just when you said that. Like, I got
I still get shivers. Like it sounds
wow.
so surreal because this is the world we're in, where it
Hmm.
sounds like
And
the
for all the all the soldiers right now listening, they're probably saying like, "Is this some science fiction movie that you're talking about?" Or like,
it's fucking nuts. Like, and like this is the thing too, is like you think about when you're really just into, I mean, anything. In this case, we'll say just being a soldier. Your mind's not going to go there first. Like maybe there is something where there's a belief of something that we'll call spiritual or non-tangible. Like especially when you're in the war type of situation, you're very quick to adopt that because you develop some sort of modality that's going to give you comfort and
hmm,
understanding about what you're experiencing. Of course I had that, but I had it before, and it got stronger through operations.
yeah,
And it continued to stay with me after I got out. If anything, it got deeper because now I was sitting there and I was like, well, I'm not the soldier, but the warrior energy is not gone. What the hell does that
the
mean?
warrior is still right in there, huh?
Yeah, yeah. He still likes to look at the hard shit, and not because I want to beat myself up, because we learn from it, and if we can learn from it, that makes us more available for our loved ones, for ourselves.
Right.
Because I mean, like, what is life but experience? It's not about being happy or rich or anything. It's about experience and connecting, and like,
Right.
it's like
You're my definition of a spiritual warrior.
thank you. Well, that means a lot, man. Like that's a huge compliment.
For sure, because it's going from that path of not an easy path,
No,
but then realizing that, okay, honoring the warrior inside of you and transmuting that warrior into like a peaceful warrior.
yeah,
You know what I mean?
yeah, because it's a very chaotic energy,
It is.
and
Trust me. I think the collective, we all have this war inside of us as well.
sure,
Like each one of
absolutely.
us, we're all dealing with our inner battles.
Yeah, like yeah, you totally nailed it right there. We've all got this war in us. We've got the warrior archetype in us. We all do.
Yeah.
You know, uh,
It's just
does it want
expressed
to?
differently from one person to the other, and it's also learning how to tame that warrior, right?
Yeah, and
Like
that's it.
for you, it's martial arts. For me, also, it's martial. Like I practice jujitsu, Muay Thai
Yeah,
as well. I really love martial arts, and that was a way, like a positive way for me to channel that, that warrior energy.
yeah, and just like our actual physical loved ones, like we have to be able to connect with it. So we get a great deal of this stuff from our stillness, but there's a certain point where you're like, I just got to beat the shit out of something to really connect with myself and that part of myself. At the other point, to connect with the healer, I'm going to sit there and I'm going to do some gardening, to nurture and connect with something, actually not beat the crap out of it because that's just as important.
Yeah,
But it's because you recognize that, because, we're this dynamic ongoing state of trying to perceive and maintain balance. We're never going to hold balance as a static state, and the thing
right.
is, like, we have to push ourselves off balance. And if I'm not going to, you're going to do it to me. You're supposed to,
It's the
right?
difference between being peaceful and being harmless, right?
Yeah,
Being
that's a good way of
peaceful
putting it.
is a choice,
Yeah.
and we choose it every day to like keep our as much as we keeping our inner peace. I mean, our outer peace. It's about keeping that inner peace wherever we are.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, there's just so many cool ways of going about doing it. Like there is no absolute in terms of like how you go about doing that. They did the journeys are
Oh,
so individualized. The metaphors that we use to communicate it, it goes full circle back to our start of the conversation. The words that you use versus the words that I use. They have
for
value for a
sure.
reason.
Like they're like that's what I tell people like, when they ask me, "Oh, but how do you practice this?" Like there is no, there's not a single way to practice whatever spirituality or meditation, however you want to label that. But there, I mean, I use sound as well as a tool.
Nice.
It's very.
Yeah.
I use. I like exploring different tools. Right.
Mhm.
I explore meditation with crystals, sound. I also did the whole, ayahuasca and other plants as well.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
um, yeah, no, I've been really getting into exploring different ways,
Yeah.
because
And
to me
yeah.
there are so many ways to reach whatever result you want to
Mhm.
get, because there's no one end goal to this. It's about more like exploring
Mhm.
and playing, you know.
Yeah, I like what you're saying there because like, and the thing is like, there's no magic behind it. So a lot of this stuff gets caught in the controversy of like, is there something energetic, in fact, about say the rocks or the sounds of it, or whether there is or isn't is not even the point. Is it elicits a state, and it takes people to a
Right.
place where they can go into that inner journey. So the thing is like, I got a computer mouse right here. If this computer mouse is going to put me into a meditative state, right? Who cares what it is or isn't, right?
Exactly.
Maybe plastic is energetic. Who cares, right?
That works for you, then hey, be my guest, please
Yeah,
use
yeah,
that.
and that's it. So like, being playful about it and being curious about it, just like you're saying, is where it's at, man. Because
Yeah.
yeah, like
Yeah,
yeah.
approaching life with that in that playful state in general, that just whatever makes you, like, whatever brings your highest excitement, whatever brings you joy, just
Mhm.
to like follow that path, you know.
Yeah, totally. Yeah,
Love it, man, love it.
yeah. This is awesome.
It's been it's been recording the whole time, and I think, you know what, I think this is gonna be the podcast.
I'm cool with that. Like,
Are you cool with that? Like, I
oh,
have to ask you first. I'm not gonna just publish something without your.
I am, and here's the thing. So, um, I don't even know. Was it been like 9 years, 10 years, something like that. I started started as a personal trainer, right? And
Okay.
right away, I was like, personal training is more to it. It's not just exercise. So I very quickly built a reputation with being able to do stuff that typically doesn't happen in personal training, but with personal training tools, exercise, coaching, communication. And I wasn't deliberately trying to be this hot shot or anything. But I'm very studious and I study everything. I love studying the nervous system and
Well, your
neurology.
your name is Lovedeep. It's kind of hard not to be a hot show with that name. Come on.
I mean, it's true, but I've only recently started to embrace it. Like, as a kid, I was made fun of a ton, and I
Really
wouldn't say I
bad.
was ever self conscious about the name. But it's funny because even just saying my name when I was younger, um, I would kind of mumble it, and like now it's like I stand behind it. Like I am Love Deep. Like I
For
own the
sure,
name.
man. Love Deep. I mean,
Yeah.
what an awesome name. That's
But also with that, like I mean, I'm super excited with just while I'm talking the way I'm talking now. Like, when you get me talking, I won't shut up. But I tend to be, pretty low key with a lot of stuff. So with that, I had a client who's a fantastic, movement professional do a podcast with me a couple of years ago. And I don't have an online presence. I don't blog anything. I just work. I just give people the results they need, give them the health, teach them how to help get the health. And I don't say anything. So the results are spoken of based on the experience that people have, and they talk about it. So she was like, I want to do a podcast with you. And I was like, all right, you know. So we do this podcast, and she did a really good job structuring it. Like she does a lot of podcasts, so she's very skilled at it. She asks some great questions and stuff. But it's one of those things where it's like, if you let me just kind of go at it like we're doing right now, it's so fun. If you start to ask like structure, I'm not gonna say it's a bad experience,
It's a
but
different experience.
yeah, it's a different one.
Right.
It's a bit too calculated for my way of being. Because like even like the way I study and the way I teach is I don't take notes. I don't organize.
Go with the flow, with that natural flow of life.
Oh yeah, and it drives people nuts because like most people who are around me that are super organized, like color coding, highlighters and stuff. But that's their way of doing it. The way I do it's very spatial. Like I'm a snow globe of disorganization, but somehow it sinks
I'm
in.
the same. Fuck, it's crazy how similar we got.
There's obviously like archetype similarities with people, and like Brian actually made a funny reference where he's like, you know that movie Step Brothers, right? I'm like, yeah. He's like, you remember that point where they realize they're gonna be best buddies? He's like, when you and Renzo start talking, it's gonna be just like that.
Holy fuck, man! Yeah, Brian, he was definitely like telling me, man, you gotta meet my friend Lovedeep. You guys are so fucking similar, and
yeah, like you're super excited
awesome
about
conversations.
it. Like,
and you know what, Brian, if you're listening, man, you were right.
yeah, absolutely. Like, you're definitely onto something. And when he gets that excited about stuff, like you gotta listen because like that's pretty legit. So yeah, this whole podcast thing was like, okay, if it's structured and organized, I mean, I'll do it. And I'm happy to talk about anything that's gonna be physiology, the body, and health. I just love to nerd up. But when it's like just rolling organically and just all over the place like this, like
yeah, it
it's
brings
so
definitely because you're just in the moment of like following the what's there, what's present.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So, yeah, me and Brian, we were like so different and so similar at the same time. It's crazy. It's like this guy, he's like, a hunter, like meat eater, straight up. Like I'm vegetarian. I eat like fish once in a while, and
Yeah.
and we're having these conversations, But what I love about this guy is that like he's so connected
That's the thing. Like,
without even realizing it himself. This guy is so connected, and
he's open-minded, and
exactly, he's very open-minded and
approaching
always
life playfully.
exactly.
Like, there's a definition of it right there.
Yeah. And he's in that natural state of joy.
But yeah, 100%. Like
That's like I love this dude. His positive attitude is very contagious. I remember like at board, and we did our course together as an image tech, and man, those were fun times with him.
Oh man, yeah. Like and that's the cool thing is like I got to meet Brian like when I was pretty young. I think it was like maybe like 17 or 18, right? So I basically got to grow up with him, and it was crazy because like that's like facets of life, not just the army stuff, and became close buddies pretty quickly, which is like unusual because I'm not one to really attach very quickly to people and connect with people like that. And like especially because like he's pretty off the wall, and like here's this guy who's like barking like a dog and cracking like random movie quotes, and he's got a really really funky taste in movies and stuff. And just like you're saying, like I'm like, here's a guy I never thought I'd be able to like actually connect with, and we're good buddies and growing up through all the ups and downs and hardships and stuff of life and the good stuff too. But like it not being actually hard, it just being like bringing it back to the presence, and just just knowing that there's good stuff always around you and there's good people around you and stuff. Like it was like, I don't know, it's just like it wasn't defined like the way it would be by the book. It was so unconventional, and it continues to be, but it's the way it should be.
No, exactly.
Yeah.
And he's the perfect example of how even though two people can be different in many ways, because me and him, we were like we're very different in many things, but how could, even if two people have many differences, how they can still be very close
to
each other, and look at their differences, kind of like embracing their difference instead of letting that separate us, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's important, especially during this time of like crisis where everything is a reason to like create separation, right?
Yeah.
It's
it's a lot of I've been seeing a lot of like us against them things,
Yeah.
and I think it's important to never forget the what's important, what really matters. It's that
Yeah.
unity, right? And like embracing our differences instead of looking at those as opposites.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you nailed it. Especially now, because the thing is, like, there's such a physical space and distancing between people. Like, we really only have, I mean, our ability to communicate verbally.